Chapter 1: Human Emotions, Understanding Our Inner World. Welcome, dear listener, and welcome to Psychology with a Soft Voice. Right now, wherever you are, I invite you to pause for a moment. If you are listening while walking, while resting, maybe even preparing to fall asleep, simply notice how your body feels in this instant. Take a breath slowly, in through your nose and softly out through your mouth. And as you breathe, allow yourself the gift of being present here with me in this calm exploration of the mind. Today, we are going to open a gentle door into emotions, those invisible yet powerful waves that shape our everyday lives. Emotions influence the way we speak, the choices we make, the people we attract, and the way we tell ourselves the story of who we are. Sometimes we try to push them away. Other times we chase them desperately, but most of the time they are simply flowing, whether we notice them or not. This episode is an invitation, not to fight emotions, not to control them rigidly, but simply to understand them, their origin, their meaning, their purpose, and their wisdom. What are emotions? In psychology, emotions are defined as multifaceted responses. They involve our body, our mind, and even our behavior. They are spontaneous and automatic. They are not chosen, and they often arrive unannounced. Think about the last time you laughed so hard you cried. Did you decide in that moment, "Now I will laugh"? No. The laughter burst forth, and only afterwards your mind made sense of it. Or think of a time you were startled. Your heart jumped, your body froze, before your brain had even figured out why. This is the essence of emotion. It begins as a physical spark, an ancient mechanism designed to keep us alive. But then feelings appear, and here is the difference. Emotions are raw reactions. Feelings are the conscious stories we tell about them. The emotion is the thunder. The feeling is the meaning we give the thunder. And those meanings are deeply influenced not only by our personality but also by our culture. In some societies, tears are seen as strength. In others, they are seen as weakness. The bodily emotion may be universal, but the way we experience and interpret it is uniquely human. A brief history of emotions in psychology. Psychologists and philosophers have tried for centuries to explain what emotions are. William James, in the late 19th century, suggested that our body reacts first, and that emotions are simply our interpretation of those bodily changes. According to James, we don't tremble because we are afraid. We are afraid because we tremble. Later theories, like the Canonbard and the Schatzsinger model, debated how much comes from the body, how much from the brain, and how much from the context. In the 20th century, Paul Ekman traveled the world and found that certain basic facial expressions, joy, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust, are recognized universally across cultures. This gave strong evidence that emotions are evolutionary, not just cultural. And in the 1990s, Daniel Goleman introduced the idea of emotional intelligence, the capacity not just to experience emotions, but to understand them, to use them, and to regulate them wisely in ourselves and in others. So emotions are not only raw biological reactions, they are also skills, tools, and even forms of wisdom. The brain and emotions. Inside your brain, there is a little almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. This structure is like a security alarm, quick, vigilant, and sometimes overreactive. When the amygdala senses danger, it floods the body with adrenaline. Your heartbeat rises, your breathing quickens, your muscles tense. Nearby, the hippocampus and other structures in the limbic system give context. What is happening? Is this danger real, or is it just a memory resurfacing? And finally, the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, tries to make sense of it all. But remember, the emotion always comes first. By the time you think, "I am afraid," your body has already reacted. This is why emotions feel so overwhelming, and why learning to pause, breathe, and give space makes such a difference. Because in that pause, the rational brain can join the conversation. The wisdom of each basic emotion. Let's pause here and slowly walk through 6 basic emotions. I invite you to reflect on each one gently, as if greeting an old friend. Fear, it protects us. In the jungle of our ancestors, fear kept us alive. Today, fear keeps us cautious while crossing the street, checking our mirrors while driving, preparing carefully for an exam. Its wisdom is survival, but when fear never turns off, it becomes anxiety. Joy, it is the glue of human connection. Smiles, laughter, celebrations bond us and give life sweetness. Its wisdom is motivation, telling us, this is worth repeating. Sadness, it invites us to stop, to grieve, to rest. Imagine how dangerous it would be if we never felt sadness, if we ignored every loss, if we rushed past every wound. Sadness says, pause, take care, let something heal. Anger, this is the voice of violated boundaries. Anger is the emotion of no. It calls for justice, protection, dignity. Without anger, we would tolerate harm endlessly. But when uncontrolled, it can burn both ourselves and others. Disgust, often forgotten but essential. Evolutionarily, it protected us from spoiled food and dangerous substances. Psychologically, it also guides us away from toxic relationships or values that feel wrong. Surprise, the spark of learning. Without surprise, life would be dull. Surprise awakens curiosity. It makes the brain alert, attentive, ready to adapt. Each emotion, when understood, is neither good nor bad. They are all messengers. When emotions become overwhelming. However, emotions don't always flow gently. Sometimes they flood. We all know this. The panic attack, the burn of chronic anger, the heavy fog of prolonged sadness. Other times we go to the opposite extreme, repression. We close the door to emotions so tightly that we no longer feel connected to ourselves. We wear masks of "I'm fine." We dismiss our pain. But what is suppressed does not disappear. It hides in the body, often as tension, illness, fatigue. This is why awareness is the first medicine. To bring emotions gently into the light of words. This that I feel is fear. This weight is sadness. This fire is anger. Numbing is tamming. How to live with emotions wisely. Working with emotions is a lifelong practice. Here are a few gentle tools we can include. 1. Mindful numbing. Every day ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? 2. Writing or journaling. Putting emotions into words organizes them and makes them less overwhelming. 3. Breathing practices. Slow breathing sends signals to the nervous system that the body is safe. 4. Compassion to yourself. Instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this, say, it's okay that I feel this. This is part of being human. 5. Connection with others. Sharing emotions in safe, caring relationships. Chapter 2. A brief history of emotions in psychology. When we speak about emotions, it's important to remember that people have been trying to understand them long before psychology became a science. Emotions are part of the human condition, and every generation has tried to explain where they come from, why they control us, and how we might learn to live with them. Let's take a long and gentle journey through the history of ideas about emotions, beginning with ancient philosophy, traveling through the rise of science, and arriving at modern psychology. Ancient philosophy, the first reflections. Aristotle and the ancient Greeks. The Greeks were among the first to reflect carefully on emotions. Aristotle, in his work Rhetoric, described emotions not as irrational bursts of madness, but as forces that shape human action, reasoning, and morality. He believed emotions could be cultivated through habits and moral training. For Aristotle, emotions were not enemies of reason. Rather, they could align with reason to guide a virtuous life. Think about anger, for example. Aristotle said that anger could be useful if expressed at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right amount. Too little anger may show cowardice. Too much anger spirals into violence. His insight remains relevant. Emotions are not good or bad in themselves, but become unhealthy when unbalanced. Stoicism. Another Greek school, the Stoics like Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, believed emotions were judgments. They argued that suffering comes not from events but from our thoughts about them. In modern terms, this foreshadowed cognitive behavioral therapy. The Stoics practiced detachment, aiming not to suppress emotions but to free themselves from the tyranny of destructive judgments. Biblical and medieval views. In early Christian thought, emotions were often called passions, something humans had to control to live a virtuous life. Medieval philosophy and theology, influenced by Augustine and Aquinas, debated whether emotions were moral or sinful. They distinguished between natural emotions and excessive passions. The early scientific era. René Descartes. In the 17th century, Descartes wrote The Passions of the Soul. He listed 6 primitive passions: wonder, love, hatred, desire, joy, and sadness. Descartes saw emotions as fundamental forces in the human mind, but he separated them from rational thought. He argued that the mind and body were distinct, and emotions were signals that connected both. Charles Darwin. Moving to the 19th century, Darwin's The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, 1872, marked a turning point. Darwin argued that emotions are evolutionary, universal behaviors shaped by natural selection, not random or purely cultural. He observed animals, dogs, cats, monkeys, and noticed parallels with human expressions. The raised eyebrows of surprise, the narrowed eyes of anger, the universal smile of joy. For Darwin, emotions were survival tools, designed to help communication and adaptation. The pioneers of psychology. William James and Carl Lange. In 1884, William James, one of the fathers of modern psychology, proposed something revolutionary. We don't cry because we are sad because we cry. Around the same time, Carl Lange in Denmark made similar claims. Together, this became the James-Lange theory of emotion. According to this view, emotions are the perception of bodily changes. The racing heart comes first, then the brain labels it fear. Example, imagine you are hiking and you see a snake. The theory says your body reacts first. Heart pounding, muscles tense, breath quicken. Afterwards, you notice this state and think, "Oh, I must be afraid." Although later criticized, this idea highlighted the importance of the body and emotions, something neuroscience is increasingly confirming today. Cannon-Bard theory. In the 1920s, physiologist Walter Cannon and Philip Bard argued against James. They said emotions and bodily arousal happen simultaneously, not sequentially. For them, the sight of the snake triggers both fear and the racing heart at the same time, through brain pathways like the thalamus. Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. Moving into the 1960s, Schachter and Singer added an important twist: cognition. They argued that arousal is only part of the story. What matters is how we interpret it. This is the two-factor theory. 1. General physiological arousal, plus. 2. A cognitive label based on the context. Equals the emotion we experience. Example, your heart is racing. At a concert, you label it excitement. In a dark alley, you label it fear. Same body, different meaning. Lazarus appraisal theory. In the 1980s, Richard Lazarus emphasized the role of appraisal. He said emotions are based on how we evaluate events in relation to our goals. Stress and anxiety, for example, depend on whether we see a situation as threatening or manageable. Modern approaches to emotions. Paul Ekman and basic emotions. Ekman studied facial expressions across cultures and showed that at least 6 emotions, happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, and surprise, are universally recognized. He also developed the study of micro-expressions, tiny flashes of emotion that reveal feelings we try to hide. Today, his work influences law enforcement, negotiations, even popular TV shows like Lie to Me. Robert Plutchik's emotion wheel. In the 1980s, psychologist Robert Plutchik created a colorful model of emotions arranged in a wheel. He proposed 8 primary emotions: joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, anticipation. They combine into blends. Anticipation plus joy equals optimism. Joy plus trust equals love. Fear plus surprise equals awe. This model illustrates how emotions are dynamic, mixing into complex experiences. Lisa Feldman Barrett and constructed emotions. In recent years, neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett has challenged the idea of universal emotions. She argues emotions are not fixed biological modules but constructed by the brain, using past experiences to predict what sensations mean in a given context. For her, what we call anger or fear are concepts built by culture and memory. Jacques Panksepp and effective neuroscience. Meanwhile, neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp studied animals and identified basic emotional circuits in the brain: seking, care, play, rage, fear, lust, panic, grief. He claimed these primal systems underlie human feeling, emotional intelligence, and beyond. In the 1990s, Daniel Goleman brought the term emotional intelligence into the mainstream. He suggested that success in life is less about IQ and more about the ability to recognize emotions, manage them, motivate ourselves, and empathize with others. Schools and businesses adopted this idea widely, highlighting self-awareness and relationship skills as essential for thriving. Psychology today: positive psychology and emotions. Finally, modern positive psychology emphasizes emotions like gratitude, awe, hope, love not just as fleeting pleasures, but as vital states that build resilience, meaning, and human flourishing. Barbara Fredrickson proposed the broaden and build theory. Positive emotions expand our ability to think creatively, connect socially, and cope with challenges. If we take a breath and look back, we can see an intriguing journey. The ancient Greeks saw emotions as companions of reason and morality. Descartes framed them as passions uniting mind and body. Darwin saw them as shared with animals, evolved for survival. James highlighted the body. Cannon emphasized the brain. Schachter and Lazarus added cognition, interpretation, and meaning. Ekman and Plutchik mapped them as universals. Barrett challenged universality, seeing emotions as constructions. Panksepp revealed emotional circuits deep in the brain. And Goleman made emotions a skill, a form of intelligence. This history teaches a humbling truth: emotions are too rich to fit into one explanation. They are biological and cultural, bodily and cognitive, ancient and modern. Each theory captures part of the truth. Together they remind us: emotions are the threads weaving our humanity. Tonight or today, we have taken the first gentle step into the landscape of emotions. We have discovered that they are not our enemies. They are our allies, protectors, teachers. Sadness tells us to heal. Anger tells us to defend our worth. Joy reminds us of what matters. Fear keeps us alert. Even disgust and surprise are guardians of our survival and our growth. This is only the beginning. In the coming episodes, we will explore each emotion in depth, dedicating a full hour to its story, its science, and its wisdom for our lives. Thank you truly for sharing this time with me. May these words accompany you as softly as a friend's voice. We will meet again soon in this quiet place, with psychology with gentleness, with a soft voice.